Hello, everybody. Thank you all very much for joining us here today. Great to have so many people involved. Massive thank you to both Rowan and Paula from Fulbright Commission in Ireland for hosting the event today. Very, very happy to have you here. We're also very, very welcome. Very happy to have involved several of our alumni, Fulbright alumni. So we have some esteemed guests with us today, including Donald Fitzpatrick, who is the DCU Campus Ambassador and Fulbright alumni. Also Dr. Francis Ward, Dr. Stephen Ward, Professor Stephen Ward, Dr. Tanya Cassidy, and we also have Dr. Rachel Barrett with us here today as well, who will share some slides at the end of the presentation in relation to the DCU strategic partnerships, which might help with deciding where you might end up on your Fulbright award. So the way we're going to work today is Paula very kindly is going to present the slides, showcase the awards, and give some advice on the applications. And we are then, Rowan is going to be very busy. He's going to be monitoring the chat function. So if you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat during the presentation. We'll also hear some words from some of our Fulbright alumni to give you some insights to their experiences. And we will finish up with a Q&A session at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Paula.
Thanks a million, Helen. Delighted to be here today. As Helen said, I'm Paula Melvin, the Student Awards Manager with the Fulbright Commission in Ireland. So Fulbright has a very rich and distinguished history. Senator J. William Fulbright set up the programme in 1946 in the United States. In 1957, Ireland joins. In 1991, the Irish Fulbright Commission was officially set up as a commission. And now in 2021, 180 countries worldwide are involved in this exchange programme. Naturally, the Fulbright Commission in Ireland deals with scholarships from Irish people going to the United States and Americans coming to Ireland. And already my internet is quite slow, so I'm going to ask Rowan to continue sharing the slides. But it's all about education exchange, and it really is an exchange between people. It's a cultural exchange, not just an academic exchange. So that's where the Fulbright may actually differ from other exchanges that you may be interested in applying to. Thanks a million, Rowan. Next slide, please. So Fulbright, who is Fulbright for? So Fulbright is for passionate and accomplished people who are students, scholars, artists, teachers, and professionals. One of my favorite aspects of my role with the Fulbright Commission is that I get to meet people who are experts in every field under the sun. We've had volcanologists, lawyers, mathematicians, you name it. And they've all come to Ireland or to the United States to research, study, and teach and lecture. Next slide, please. But really, Fulbright is for everyone. What the awards provide then, so a monetary grant, which I'll be talking about more in subsequent slides, visa and administration, you'll be going to the States on a special Fulbright visa, accident and emergency insurance, cultural and professional programming, and ongoing and support and links to a global network of Fulbright alumni. Next slide, please. I'm sure the alumni who'll be talking later will definitely be speaking about that last point. So Fulbright really is the experience of a lifetime, and it really is a lifelong engagement if you want it to be. So your Fulbright award does not have to end when you come home from the United States. As in, you can come home and you can join the Irish Fulbright Alumni Association and the Ireland United States Alumni Association as well. So there's this fantastic recognition, and there really is this Fulbright family, and you'll get to join global peers. When you're on a Fulbright, you not only get to know the Irish Fulbrighters who will also be going out in the same cohort as yourself, you'll also get to meet Fulbrighters who are in the States from Germany, Japan, numerous countries around the world. Next slide, please, Ron. So we have some fantastic DCU awardees. It's fantastic to see so many of them on this call. So Dr. Francis Ward will be talking at the very end. So will Dr. Stephen Ward, I believe no relation, who's currently on a Fulbright from the United States to DCU at the moment. And Dr. Tanya Cassidy will be speaking in a minute after the campus ambassador. Next slide, please, Rowan. So we have this initiative where we have a Fulbright ambassador in each third level institute. We have a Fulbright ambassador, and the DCU current Fulbright ambassador is Dr. Donald Fitzpatrick. So if Donald would like to say a few words now about his Fulbright experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Paula, for the introduction. My Fulbright experience happened quite a while ago, but I could honestly say that the impact has very much been lasting, because some of the contacts that I made and the work that I did during my Fulbright experience, I went to Florida State and went outside my comfort zone actually as a computer scientist, and actually worked in a geography department. And the work that we started there is actually now, many years later, actually becoming very topical. And the contacts that I made, but the lasting impression that I had from my time in the US was of the warmth and appreciation that I received as a Fulbrighter. People were tremendously welcoming, and the cultural side of the experience is something that I think has lived with me almost more vividly than the academic side of it. Because when I went over, I was in Tallahassee, where there weren't many Irish people, and within a matter of a few weeks, I had been invited to go join, for example, an Irish it was an Irish session of music, which was hosted by a bunch of students from the ethnomusicology department. And again, through that, some people that I met during that particular those particular events, which ran for the whole year, are still friends. So I would just echo the comments that were made previously, that the whole Fulbright experience goes way beyond the very important research work that we do in the labs or in the field work that we actually do, and extends into the cultural exchange that actually happens. And it's not an exaggeration to say it was life changing, because I had never I had never lived outside Ireland for the length of time that I was away. And as I said, the friends and the contacts that I actually made are still um, lifelong friends and colleagues. So it's a great experience, and I would absolutely encourage people to apply.
Thanks a million, Donal, and thank you for all your hard work promoting the Fulbright program. I think that the amount of people on this call is a testament to how much you've promoted Fulbright in DCU. And I think now Dr. Tanya Cassidy, another wonderful Fulbright alumna, is going to share a few words about her experience recently on a Fulbright.
Thanks, Paula, very much, and thanks, Helen, and everyone for allowing me to talk a little bit about my experience during the Fulbright. I had my Fulbright not too long ago, but a couple of years ago. It feels like a lifetime ago, because it's pre-COVID. So, but it was in the. I ended up, unlike Donald, instead of taking a full year, I took 2 terms. So I ended up going in May and staying until the end of the summer. And it coordinated for me. I'm a mother who has a teenage child who wanted to also go and spend part of his summer with me at MIT, which he thought was very cool, that I was spending, that I became a staff member at that university. My Fulbright was part of one of the special awards. So it was a Fulbright HRB Health Impact Award. And as a social scientist, it was also unusual in that I was going to MIT, which is not necessarily always known for its work in social science, but like Donald pointed out, it's one of those places that thinks outside of the box. And often with the Fulbright, what I've found is that those are many of the people involved. They are the innovators, the people who are really doing things that maybe we are not part of what everyone thinks of, but actually makes such a huge difference in terms of things. And also, like Donald, my experience did not stop there. I have continued to stay so connected with so many of the people that I met there, including two people who finished PhDs while I was there, one of whom went back to Israel, one went back to Turkey, and we are working on publications together out of their work. And also a colleague who who's still a professor at the University of Connecticut, but who she's originally from France, so she decided to come back and bring her family to France to hide out for COVID. She ended up getting COVID in the transfer of that, but that's another whole story. But as part of it, she has stayed in contact, and we just submitted a paper yesterday out of some of the work we've done since then. But it's all connected to the original topic that I had when I was working on my Fulbright. It was, as somebody who actually has done a lot of international things, you can hear my voice. My accent is originally from Canada, but I've actually lived in Ireland longer than I ever lived in Canada. And I have traveled a lot, but the Fulbright is an amazing feature of these things. It opened doors that my Mary Curie or my other experiences internationally never did. And so it was literally something that was one of the best things I've ever chose to do. And as part of that, colleagues that I knew both at Maynooth University and DCU, they were very, very helpful to me and generous in terms of helping me to think about how to present the work I was doing and what would be the best way to use the Fulbright to do those things. And I'm very happy to do the same for anyone else who's interested in applying, because I think everyone can apply. It is a matter of where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, that you can shape in terms of what you're going to apply for. So do stay in touch. Okay.
Thanks a million, Tanya. I definitely think we should get you to write a testimonial. But I think what's fantastic as well about on this call is that just the different kind of, you can see that we've people from School of Computing, physical education, music, nursing, as in it really is, like Tanya said, it doesn't matter what kind of discipline you're coming from, Fulbright is from you. And I'm going to ask Rowan to kindly share the slides again. So in terms of eligibility then, so who can apply for a Fulbright? So the Irish awards are open to Irish and EU citizens who've been based in Ireland for at least 3 years. I frequently get questions about, does it matter that I'm a dual citizen? It doesn't matter if you're a dual citizen with Canada or not, that's fine. Or if you're a dual citizen, Germany and Ireland, that is fine, you can apply. You must demonstrate a strong rationale for where you're going in the US. So Tanya would have had to say why she was going to MIT, and Donna would have had to have a strong rationale for going to Florida. I personally would like to spend some time in Hawaii or Las Vegas, but you need to have a strong rationale for where you want to go. It has to be because they're doing this X, Y, or Z in North Dakota, and I need to be there to work with this expert and bring that knowledge back to Ireland. Also, I'd just like to say it can be quite boring when every single interviewee wants to go to Harvard or wherever. We want diversity of academic institute. So we really, really, really want to see that. You must comply with the 2-year home rule visa requirement. Now, this is quite a hated rule. It does not matter if you move to America on a Fulbright, fall in love with an American, have American children, and get married to an American, you still have to comply with the 2-year home rule. So that means after you finish your Fulbright and your body of work, you must have to come home to Ireland for 2 years before you're eligible to obtain a visa to work and live in the United States. Traditionally, they've allowed you to undertake the 2-year home rule within the European Union, but we cannot guarantee that rule will remain in place going forward. So if your ultimate aim is to leave DCU and go to the States and stay there forever, Fulbright may not be for you. However, you cannot be a dual US-Irish citizen. You cannot be living in the United States at the time of application. And you cannot have recent extensive experience of studying or living in the United States. And by that, we mean that you cannot have spent, say, the past 4 out of the last 5 years in the United States. Next slide, please, Rowan. And where 2 candidates are scored quite similarly. Preference will be given to the candidate who doesn't have the same extensive experience in the United States. So I'm sure academics like Tanya and Donna will say, yes, it is a lengthy enough process, and it's not just sending a CV for the application process to apply for Fulbright. However, I believe it is less extensive than some other academic grants applications. Next slide, please. So the timeline, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the application, that each year is kind of the same timeline anyway. At the end of August, the application process opens for Irish awardees. Around Halloween time, the application competition period closes. And then in November and December, my colleague Sonia and I were both the award managers for the Fulbright Commission. We spend our time sourcing 3 expert reviewers to review your application. So there will be expert reviewers in your field. We do look for reviewers internationally and people who don't know you. Professor Darragh, President of DCU, has kindly served as a reviewer. And we often call on Fulbright alumni to review the applications as well. Then in January and February, the interviews are conducted in our office in Dublin. However, this year they were naturally virtually due to COVID. And then in March is a very bittersweet month. We have the pleasure of calling and emailing people who are successful, but we also obviously have to inform those who were not successful. So it's great that you're on this call today in terms of planning. Now is a great time to research where you want to go in the States. Choose your award, find a course or plan a research proposal. Definitely research what it means to be a Fulbrighter. Fulbright isn't just about you, it really is about the greater good. So it's not just that, say, Tanya or Donald were saying, I want to do this for my career, blah, 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 blah. It has to be, no, I want to bring this knowledge back to nursing or to computing in Ireland, or I want to bring this knowledge back to DCU or Dublin. That's what it is about to be a Fulbrighter. Also, it's not just about what you're going to do in the lab or in the classroom. It really is about the ethos of Fulbright, as in, I'm going to the States and I'm going to do history, but I'm also interested in setting up a branch of Cunner na Gaeilge or Gaelic football, the GAA, or I want to get involved in Black Lives Matter in the States and take that knowledge back to Ireland. So think about, it's not just about what you're going to do in the lab. And definitely go onto our website, fulbright.ie, and there's a lot of information there, but you can always pick up the phone and call us in the office. Well, we're working from home, but yes, or email us. Next slide, please, Rowan. So then the different Irish award categories. So the Irish Student Awards, Fulbright is postgraduate. So for the Irish Student Awards are for masters or PhDs. A lot of my students will go to the States doing part of their PhD. So they'll be doing their PhD in DCU, but they might go to the University of Ohio for 4 months or 10 months. The Irish Scholar Awards are for research or to lecture in the United States. The Irish Tech Impact Awards are for academic research with a focus on ICT. And then the Flta Awards are Chun Gaeilge a Bhunas na Stát Aontaithe. And I know that with the amalgamation with the different colleges that have now all combined for DCU, you have a fantastically very large Irish department in DCU. So I expect lots of applications from Irish speakers from DCU. And then you have the Fulbright Schumann Awards, which are also research and lecture and study in the United States. But we're going to have more on each of these categories next. Next slide, please. So then the Irish Student Awards, like I said, are for postgraduate students in all disciplines. So for visiting, researching, or degree-seeking students, so generally doing a master's, part of their PhD, or even all of their PhD. But if you're applying to Fulbright to undertake a 2-year master's in the States, Fulbright would fund you for the first year. Similarly, if you're doing a 4-year PhD entirely in the States, you will be funded for just the first year. You must establish your affiliation or apply for degree courses in the United States. Now, I know Dr. Rachel Barrett is going to talk later about the strategic partnerships, say, that DCU have with Notre Dame in the States and whatnot. So obviously, I know there's lots of support in DCU when you're seeking your affiliation, but really and truly, if you are doing nursing or if you are doing psychology, whatever you're doing in DCU, talk to your lecturers about where's the best place for you to go in the United States, and drop them an email, phone them, and explain that you're applying for a Fulbright and that you're interested in collaborating with them. But when they're ranking US institutions, they actually do take into consideration how many Fulbrighters they take in and they send out. So it's in their best interest for a Fulbrighter to come to their institution anyway. The minimum amount of time that you can undertake a Fulbright award in the United States as a student is 4 months, and the max is 12 months. And the maximum stipend is €30,000 tax-free. Now, it does vary. Say if you're going to New York City, you will get more than someone who is going to Idaho for the same duration of time, because it is calculated taking into consideration the cost of living. Obviously, the cost of living is higher in New York City than it would be somewhere in Montana. So that is taken into consideration, as is the cost of flights. Next slide, please. And then we have the Irish Scholar Award. So the difference between students and scholars generally is that scholars generally tend to have a PhD already, or 5 years relevant professional experience in the field in which that they plan to do their researching in. They're to research and lecture in the United States. Again, you must establish your own affiliation with a US institution. They are slightly shorter in duration in that you can go for just 3 months, a max 12 months, and then the max stipend is €35,000. Next slide, please, Rowan. And then you have the Irish Tech Impact Scholar Awards, which are a lot shorter in duration. They're for just 2 weeks to 3 months. The max award is €11,000, and you must possess a PhD or 3 to 5 years professional relevant experience. And preference is given to early career researchers, so PhDs conferred since 2019, and for the non-commercial research exploring transformative power of ICT. Now, these are actually quite open, as in, I believe Dr. Theresa Lynn did one in the Irish language using ICT. You can do agriculture, whatever your field, whatever your discipline is, you can undertake a Tech Impact Award and go once it uses ICT. So it's actually quite a broad umbrella that you can apply under. Next slide, please. And then the FLTA Award, so the Foreign Language Teaching Assistants, Con Gaeilge Bhúna Snastáit Aontaithe. Candice, na difficulty for the FLTA awards are that we actually place you in the most appropriate institution in the United States. So I'm just going to use Notre Dame, for example, because DCU has a strategic partnership with Notre Dame. Notre Dame generally requests an FLTA who has a PhD. So we'll kind of consider where the FLTA would like to go in the States, and we'll take that into consideration, but we'll also take into consideration the host institution's needs. These awards include room, board, tuition fees, waivers, stipend, travel and program in the US. You must have an undergraduate degree, tahi múntóireachta agus Gaeilge líofa, and they're for 10 months duration. Next slide, please. And then sponsored awards. If you're interested in applying for a student or scholar award, I strongly suggest you have a look at our sponsored awards, because say if you apply for the Teagasc Award because you're based in food science or forestry or whatever, if you are deemed ineligible for that award, or someone else selects that award, you will then be considered for the all discipline award. So you are increasing your chances of being successful, and Fulbright is very competitive. Now, we frequently get questions about what are the statistics. We're very shy to release the statistics regarding how many people apply to awards, but naturally enough, the sponsored awards, you're applying against less people essentially because they're sponsored, they're very specific, whereas all disciplines, you'll be applying against people from a wide variety of awards. So the sponsored awards can be in targeted areas like creativity, environment, or cybersecurity. They may have very much more specific criteria, so check out their flyers on our website, fulbright.ie. And you must fill out a sponsored award form in the Fulbright application to be considered for one of these sponsored awards. Next slide, please. But definitely, please do consider these awards. So then sponsored awards, some are for both student and scholars. So the Enterprise Ireland Award, for example, is in innovation and business. The EPA Award is in water, climate change, and environment. The GSI Award is in geoscience. Then for students only, you have the Creative Ireland Museum Fellowships. You have the LLM Awards, so Masters in Law, naturally. Teagasc in agriculture, forestry, or food. Then the scholars only category. So if you have the 5 years relevant professional experience or the PhD, the HRB Health Impact Award, the NUI Scholar Award for early career. So I know that DCU isn't a part of NUI. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But if you're an NUI graduate, you can. So then the Fulbright Creative Ireland Scholar Fellowship for professionals and the Tech Impact for the short-term research. and the Tech Impact Cybersecurity Award at Boston College as well. Next slide, please. So application requirements. So your personal information and CV, standard enough. Your personal statement or Fulbright statement, depending on the application you're applying for. And I cannot stress enough that Fulbright is about people, is a cultural engagement. So really that personal statement should be about you. Then your project statement, obviously about your project. Your 3 recommenders or 3 referees who will submit in time for you because they have the same deadline to submit a reference for you that you have to submit your application. Students have to submit transcripts, a copy of your passport, so work samples as well for artists, and a letter of affiliation for researcher scholars. So that letter of affiliation is to say that they're willing to host you for X amount of time. We like for students to have this as well, but obviously there's thousands of institutions in the States, and the deadlines for each course in each institute in the States don't always nicely line up with our deadlines. So if possible, have that letter of affiliation if you're a student. Next slide, please, Rowan. Sometimes we actually tell people they've been awarded the Fulbright, but they're still waiting on their acceptance from the university. So preparing your application, your study or research objectives. Why is your work groundbreaking? Why is it different? What's your rationale for going to the US? A brilliant rationale include things like, oh, I'm doing this master's in sustainable fashion or ceramics or whatever it is, and they don't offer this exact master's in Ireland. So that's the reason I want to go to the States. Identify the specific areas you wish to concentrate on. Explain the research question and objectives, methodology, and expected results. And what impact will this have on your discipline, research, and career? Next slide, please. So then the personal statement, like I said, it is about you personally. So tell us about yourself. Personal and professional ambitions, motivations, and interests. Are you a world-class ukulele player? Are you going to bring that with you to the States? Tell us. What you hope to achieve in the US and upon your return, and the role and benefit of being a Fulbrighter. So don't rehash your study objective, essay, or CV. Next slide, please. And it's an indication of your written communication as well, skills as well. So then diversity and inclusion, I already touched upon the fact that we like diversity of institution, that it's not supposed to just be an exchange between DCU and Harvard, or it's supposed to be all across the United States. In my 5 years with the commission, I don't think I've seen anyone go to either North or South Dakota. So think outside the box. It's an exchange between all of Ireland and all the states, but obviously diversity and inclusion means a lot of things. So we welcome candidates from underrepresented communities, areas of research, home organizations and HEIs, geographical areas, ethnicity, and ability. Next slide, please. So finding a host, research experts in your field. We welcome diversity where you want to go. Research to Irish and US Fulbright alums. So you have several Fulbright alumni on this call who are more than willing to engage with you and help you, because obviously you can pick up the phone and call us in the office, but I haven't done a Fulbright, but people on this call have. Use existing Fulbright links. I know I spent St. Patrick's Day on a call for DCU alumni and Arizona State University, so I know there's some connections there already, but definitely ask your mentors. Select a degree or choose a host institution, but it should always make sense. Next slide, please. And then the Creative Ireland Museum Fellowships, the research opportunities to students category only to go to the Harry Ransom Centre or the Exploratorium or Smithsonian. Now, I've been to the Exploratorium and Smithsonian, and I am so jealous of anyone who'd go to either of these two institutions because they are incredible. Each award has specific eligibility criteria, so definitely have a look at the flyers, and you must seek a letter of support from the host and include it in your Fulbright application. But to anyone who's been in Washington, DC, you'll know there's so many different parts of the Smithsonian around the city. They have such fantastic, extensive catalogs that you can do research in, so definitely have a look about that if you're in that area. Next slide, please. I'm very jealous of anyone who does them. Then law, LLMs are famous for being expensive for education in the States. So definitely if you want to do a master's in law, have a look at these 3 sponsored awards, as in there's one to the Maurer School of Law in Indiana, which we've yet to send someone to, the Notre Dame School of Law, and Pell LLM Award. So the above courses have guaranteed fee waivers. You should seek similar waivers if needed from other LLM schools before applying to Fulbright. So masters in the States can cost a lot of money, as you're probably aware. Sometimes when Fulbrighters have been awarded a Fulbright to go to the States, and then the student tells that host institution they've gotten Fulbright, the institution has followed up and offered the student a tuition waiver, which is fantastic, because unfortunately, we in the Commission get so many very qualified candidates that we'd love to support. However, unfortunately, we've limited budgets, so therefore we cannot support everyone we'd like to, and our funding will not cover your entire living costs and the cost of the LLM. So definitely ask. You've nothing to lose by asking if they offer fee waivers to international students or to a Fulbrighter. Next slide, please. And then the other associate awards: Florida Poly STEM Graduate Assistantship, Master Degree and Graduate Assistantship in STEM programs, includes direct payments for services as teaching and or research assistant tuition support. University of Southern California MSc or PhD programs, MSc in an engineering or computer science discipline, partial tuition fee waivers for MSc programs, engineering, computer science PhD program in a broad range of disciplines, and full financial support. Next slide, please. And now the interview and the review. So at the review stage, like I said, my colleague Sonia and I, we find 3 expert reviewers in your field who do not know you. So there may be people in France and Germany, Fulbright alum around the world reviewing your application. If you are in law, they will be lawyers or barristers or experts in law reviewing your application. So that's where the focus is at the review stage. And it's less so focused on the culture and engagement and the leadership side of things, because leadership is very important in Fulbright. But then at the interview stage, and obviously not everyone who applies for Fulbright is awarded an interview, those who attend interview, you will be interviewed by 3 generally Fulbright alum, a mixture of Irish and US people. They may not be experts in your field. You may be applying, doing research in history, and there may not be a historian in your interview panel, because they read what the reviewers wrote, as in about the academic experts, but the focus at the interview stage is on the cultural engagement and leadership side of things. And the interview is less focused on your academic record and project statement. Because like I said, Fulbright really is about people and their engagement. So it's very worthwhile knowing that. Next slide, please, Rob. And then the Schumann Awards. Now, these have a different application timeline. They open in December 2021. They are managed by our colleagues in the Belgium Fulbright Commission. They're co-funded by the European Union. They're in US-EU relations policy or EU affairs. They're awards for postdoctoral research and lecturing for scholars, or for students for pre-doctoral research. International educators will be matched with US institutions. Innovation Awards supporting research at the intersection of technology and policy. They're open to applicants from all EU member states. Please let us know if you're applying for this award through the Belgian Commission. And please note, you can only apply for 1 Fulbright in any 1 year. So you can apply through the Belgian Commission for a Schumann, or you can apply to the FLTA program or the student or the scholar, but you cannot apply for more than 1 in 1 year. You can obviously apply for a sponsored student award, and then you'll be considered for the all disciplines. So that's worth noting. Next slide, please. And then the US award category. So I'm delighted that Dr. Stefan Ward will be joining us in just a few minutes to tell us about his experience as an American scholar in Ireland on the flip side. So the US award categories are about bringing US colleagues to Ireland. So the US awards for students are for students to come basically do masters and PhDs or part of their PhDs in Ireland. Every year we have a sponsored DCU award where a student can apply to undertake a master's in DCU, and they always have a wonderful experience. Then the US Scholar Awards are academic, professional research or lecturing. US Specialist Awards are academic, professional, short-term awards. The US Global Scholar Awards are academic, professional in 1 or more countries. And then the Schumann Awards again are in EU countries. So next slide, please, Rowan. So the US Special Awards, these are for an institution like DCU to host a US specialist. Ireland is afforded 5 each year. So the institution, say DCU, applies to the Commission to address critical priorities. So say if you think you need some expert to come into whatever skill, engineering or whatever it is, it's to address a critical priority. The short-term rewards, so 2 to 6 weeks, so they're very cost efficient, essentially, to get experts into your institution. They're open from June to September 2021. for the 2022 academic year. The roster of specialists is available. Specialists can also be invited. So these are definitely worth considering for the institution. Next slide, please. And next, then you have, these are all the sponsored awards. So way earlier on, I showed the slide of Chagas and EPA and Smithsonian. These are the flip side. These are the sponsored awards for Americans to come into Ireland. So like I said, we have that wonderful Pod Masters where US students can come to DCU in all disciplines. So I work with Karen Keating on that award in DCU. And obviously then we have the sponsored scholar awards there. There's one in DCU in business. So they're open October to December annually. And each year we reach out to the higher institutes of education to renew or set up new US awards. So please contact us to discuss further if you want to establish additional awards. Next slide, please. So the next steps, definitely reach out to your recommenders, select a host institution, research that Fulbright ethos, talk to a Fulbrighter, follow us on social media, and there's our email address, awards@fulbright.ie. Fulbright only has one L, and also look on our website. So thank you for listening to this, and I am absolutely delighted now to introduce Dr. Francis Ward to discuss his experience of his Fulbright in music, which he did very recently. I feel like it was only 2 years ago, perhaps.
Thanks, Paula. Yeah, it was actually just this time last year. So it was just 6 months, 6 months, but I would recommend anybody who's applying maybe to think about the, maxing out the opportunity they can. Unfortunately, I had the dreaded COVID come in the middle of mine around March. So I arrived in January 2020 to Seattle to research and teach at the School of Music at the University of Washington. And you'll have heard Paula talk about reaching out to an institution to make that link. And my understanding is normally you do that to maybe an individual who's particularly prominent in your fields. In my experience, there was a particular scholar, really well respected in both music education and ethnomusicology, two disciplines which I work in and work at the interface of. And she's probably one of the global leaders in kind of straddling both of those disciplines. So I just reached out to her with an email about the possibility of it, and was blown away really by the warmth with which it was received. And I'm sure that's many people's experience, as some of the other panelists have said. When you mention Fulbright, people are just light up like a light bulb. So that, I was very excited about that opportunity, and I really felt that, I wasn't completely sure that what was it going to be the right institute, was that person going to, because all I had done was read all her work and thought it was great, but you just don't know about that personal relationship. But as soon as I got the reply, I knew that match was really, really right for me. And her work and the work that the institution do there are well matched to my teaching here in DCU and my research. So I arrived in January and stayed until July, and had a good few research projects that I wanted to work on, based in music education and ethnomusicology. There was a variety of experiences provided that I'd kind of planned for, which was kind of the research side, but also the teaching there, contributing to the teaching of the School of Music. And I had a weekly seminar of around 25 students interested in taking the class. So that was a lovely way of integrating. With the Scholar Award, you can go the route of all teaching or all research, or a combination of both. And I chose the combination. I really felt it helped me integrate into the kind of faculty there, and into even the postgraduate and postdoctoral student body. So it was a nice way to kind of settle in, by doing a little bit of teaching. So that was really fabulous, as well as the academic dimension that everybody's mentioned. Of course, there is the cultural one. Seattle is just the most amazing city. It was just so enjoyable to be there. It really has the best of everything, a big city life, but lots of parks, lots of lakes, access to water, the mountains, really lovely, warm people. So that was a really made some lovely contacts in the university, but also in the wider community, who I stay in touch with, and have very warm relationships with them. So really it's, yeah, about accessing and maximizing that cultural and academic experience. This time last year, Seattle and the United States, was under kind of that's the impact of COVID, and also the revolution of Black Lives Matter, of which Seattle was a particular epicenter. So, and I lived just a couple of blocks, as they say, from the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which was really the pressure point of the movement in the city. So, I mean, that side was transformative, really. I mean, one of the dimensions I went to study there and to research was about social justice and social inclusion. So a kind of unexpected byproduct of being in the States at that time was the pressure from COVID and the pressure from the social movements. So, yeah, I would say that, the long term, I'm only experiencing the short term benefits of the Fulbright experience at the minute, but with the relationships I've established, I expect them to develop into medium and long term relationships. So if anybody's any questions or on the particulars of the research, I'm doing a presentation on the 20th of April at 6 p.m. That's a Tuesday. It's part of the Institute of Education outreach talks. I'll go into kind of more of my research and my cultural experience there. And I'm happy to take questions after now or more specific questions on the night.
Looking forward to that, Francis. Thanks a million. As 20th of April at 6 p.m.
Yep.
Looking forward to it. And now no one can say that Dr. Francis Ward had a boring time in Seattle by the sounds of things. And I think it's fair to say that Dr. Stefan Ward is currently having a very unique experience in DCU at the moment. So Stefan, if you'd like to share your experience of being a scholar, obviously it's a unique 2023. COVID will be a nightmare that we'll all have forgotten. Just muted there. Sorry, I think you're muted, Stefan.
Thank you. Thank you for the Fulbright people for having me here. It's been a really good experience. Not what I expected, but still, everyone is super friendly, and I think that goes both ways. Some of the earlier presenters talked about how friendly the relationship is, and it really is. And so I thought it was interesting that the reciprocity between Francis coming from Ireland to Seattle and me coming from near Seattle to Ireland sort of was an interesting balance overall. But so I'm having, one of the things that I would say is that I like what Paula said about you don't have to think of your normal research or your proposal as being something that's not funded or the same old thing. Mine was very different. I wanted to do research on what normally, let me take a step back. Normally what I do is I bring my students here. I'm in teacher education, so I bring my students here in the summers, and we work with an inner city group called Project Fund Direction, which works for teaching physical literacy to inner city girls. And so my students get a chance to practice their teaching skills, get a little diversity, get to work with, in another country. So it's really cool. And the Fulbright offered me the opportunity to come back and do that longer, because normally when I bring my students, I'm really focused on my students and taking them around the different cultural sites. But being here for 6 months allowed me to really experience more myself. Like I lived at DCU every summer, so I live on the sports campus here, but I had no idea what was around my 5K with just a brief walk. So now that I've had plenty of time and lots of opportunity to walk, I've found the botanical gardens, and I found St. Anne's is a really nice park, Phoenix Park. I've walked to a lot of pubs and stood outside, but I haven't been able to go in, but they look cool, like Grave Diggers and a couple of other things. So my proposal was 3 parts. I wanted to work with students at DCU. I wanted to their teacher education. So what the counterparts of my students would be. So I wanted to see how DCU did it with my colleague Mara Coulter, who is I think she's the dean of research now, but she's also a professor in physical education. So I got a chance to kind of pick up some good tips from her. I also wanted to work with the kids in Dublin that I don't get to work with in the summer year round. Hopefully that'll happen in April. I'm hoping we'll be able to get back before I leave. But the process that I had, I thought my proposal was a little weird because it wasn't just research. It was some teaching, some training of staff, and then some working directly with kids. And so I was really happy when it got accepted. So I would say that, you know, don't think of whatever proposal you want to do is automatically disqualified because it's not heavy in research or it's not heavy in teaching. I thought they were very, very cool about how they looked at what the overall idea of the cultural immersion, as well as everything else that you had to offer. So thank you again very much. Everybody here has been super friendly. I would also echo that I think the connection helped me, having two different people that I was going to work with in my application. So I think some of the earlier speakers talked about that. So getting a connection with a university or a program or something, figuring out how the reciprocity can work with both of you, I think can be really beneficial to the impact of you going over there and learning stuff and what you do in the US also, but what you could bring back here. So I think that's everything that I wanted to say. But yeah, thanks again for the everything that you guys have done for me. It's been great. And you know, when I first got here, I thought it was awesome because I'm living in a little dorm in the top of one of the buildings, but my refrigerator was stocked when I got here. So I was like, I'm going to quarantine. How do I eat? You know, what kind of food do I get? And I got here and there's already stuff here. And so I've had people constantly contacting me, making sure I'm okay. Want to go for a walk? Do you need more food or something else? So it's been a really, really grand experience. So thank you.
And I like the way you're speaking like an Irish person already with the grand. Thanks a million, Stefan. And now I think Dr. Rachel Barrett, who's the International Strategic Research and Partnerships Coordinator, is going to talk about strategic partnerships that DCU already have in the US.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just do a shared screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, so DCU has had a partnership with Arizona State University for many years, and I coordinate that partnership. So I always like to take the opportunity at the Fulbright presentation to give a little plug for ASU that you might like to consider going there as the host for your Fulbright. So I'll just give you a little bit of background. So ASU was established in 1885. It has 5 campuses, 5 very large campuses in the Phoenix metropolitan area. There are 100,000 enrolled students. It is huge. Now they're not all full-time. They're very active in the kind of online distance education. They have a lot of part-time programs. It's probably about half of that would be full-time students. They have students from all 50 states, and they take in students from more than 130 different foreign countries. So it's a very international campus. They also have nearly 3,000 faculty. 5 of those are Nobel laureates, and 7 are Pulitzer Prize winners on faculty. So the next couple of slides are why you might want to consider ASU as your host. So in terms of research, ASU is a very ambitious place. So they have been the fastest growing research university in the US since 2004. So in terms of research expenditure, they've more than tripled that of all other US universities. So that's in terms of research grants, philanthropy, big donations from business. They have gone from 0 to hero really on that. So they're very, very active, very ambitious in research. They have a few credentials you might be interested in. So they have been rated #1 in the US for innovation. So that puts them ahead of MIT and Stanford. They've been judged #1 in the US and in the top 5 in the world for global impact. So that is things to do with like their work on the Sustainable Development Goals, that type of thing. And then I thought this one was an interesting one. So they are in the US, one of the top producers of Fulbright students. So that's like students going out from the States. But what it does mean is that ASU is very familiar and very active in the Fulbright program. So it's certainly, not something that they'll never heard or anything like that. They're very interested, they're very engaged. There are many huge research institution initiatives on practically every area of research you could think about. So these are just a few of them. We go from space to humanities research. This one I'd like to point out over here, this is the Biodesign Institute. In the last year or two, we've actually set up a sister institute in DCU, which is Biodesign Europe, which you might have heard of if you're at DCU. The idea of this is about kind of taking natural processes, like natural systems, and then trying to apply those approaches to solve other various problems in society. So it's a very interesting approach, and that one has been set up recently in DCU, so that could be a nice counterpart if you're thinking about doing a Fulbright in that area, because there's already a very obvious way to link back anything you learn or do over there back at home. So then a little bit about the partnership. So we've had a collaboration since 2006. The formal partnership is called the Transatlantic Higher Education Partnership, and that was signed in 2013. So that was the formal bit, but we obviously had a partnership for many years before that. What that means in practicality is that ASU and DCU both have a coordinator in each university. So I'm the coordinator for DCU, there's a coordinator over there. So you already have, unlike maybe a lot of other universities in the States, you already have a set in place, you have contacts that can help you find a partner or a supervisor or contacts over in ASU that's already set up. All you need to do is email me, there you go. Also, what we can offer is support when you come back, which through more of an institutional approach. So of course you'd have the support of the people you meet over there and hopefully all the great connections, but you'll have the in-place collaborative structure that we have to further support you. So of course, as we're talking, it's not just all about research. So why do you want to go to Arizona? So, I mean, there's many natural wonders of it. I mean, if you want to get it further away in terms of how the place looks or the climate from Ireland, you couldn't get much different from Arizona. So the Grand Canyon is based in Arizona. There's plenty of sun. Now, like, to be totally honest, like in the height of summer, the sun is a little bit much. But over winter, it's actually the most beautiful, Irish summer's day you could imagine. That the weather is glorious in the winter. Also, you think about your Fulbright dollars will go further in Arizona. The cost of living is quite cheap there. So, as just as a rough estimate, you can get a one-bedroom apartment for $830 a month, which, gosh, by Dublin standards is amazing. A two-bed would just cost just about over $1,000. So, compared to a lot of other big cities in the US, it's very affordable in Phoenix. So if ASU is somewhere you'd be interested in, like, do get in touch. We already have the contacts over there that can help you make it work. So, okay, thanks very much.
Thanks a million, Rachel. I really want to visit the Grand Canyon, so very jealous of anyone who applies to Arizona. I know David Arconza was a DCU student who got a Fulbright to go to Arizona State. So
did, yeah.
And I think Rowan's going to host the Q&A now.
Yep, thanks a million for all the speakers. Lots of insightful bits there. I might just jump in with, there's a question about ASU from the last question that popped in there. Do they do health initiatives? I would assume they do if they have 100,000 students in there, but
yeah, now it's a bit interesting. Arizona doesn't have a medical school, so they're quite like DCU in that. So they have nursing, they have other allied health professionals, but they don't have medicine. But what they do have is very, very strong connections to other, to say Johns Hopkins and other universities. So even though they don't actually have a medical school themselves, they still do actually do quite a lot of health research. But in terms of eye health, yes, they would have. Now, I can't quote you off the top of my head some names, but that would be easily found out. But they would definitely be active in that area, yeah.
And then Paula, I'll just pop back. And also, if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask. We're going to run through a few, but if you have any kind of last minute ones here, just pop them in the chat and we will get to them. So Paula, if you are offered a fellowship in, let's say 2020 or this year, are you able to defer it for maternity or paternity leave? I love these technical questions for you.
So Fulbright is run in 180 countries around the world. As far as I'm aware, the rule applies across all the countries Fulbright is running, that at the moment, no, you cannot defer for paternity and maternity leave at the moment. Traditionally, for no reason, you have not been able to defer an award. The one exception was if your host institution was closed due to COVID and could not host you in any way possible, you were allowed to defer. But that was something that came about because of COVID as a once-off situation.
Okay, the next question. So a niche question. So for instance, someone who is British, has been living in Ireland, and they're doing a PhD. They're living in Ireland for the last 4 years. Are they eligible, Paula? I'm like taking notes here because I don't know the answers to these.
If you can get an Irish passport, if you're applying for future years now, you're no longer part of the European Union. If Brexit hadn't have happened, you would have been eligible. Unless you can get an Irish passport, you're not. But say if you were German or French or Spanish and living in Ireland, you could.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so if you have an Irish passport, you're good to go.
Or an European passport and a resident for 3+ years, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, the last...
Sorry, can I just say, you could possibly be eligible to apply to the UK Commission. The rules vary from commission to commission to commission. So perhaps you'd be eligible to the UK Commission, because I believe, and I do not work for the British Commission, but I believe the last time I checked their website that their rule was that if you're not eligible to apply for another commission, you might be able to apply to their commission if you did your undergraduate degree in the UK, but definitely check that with the British Commission.
And then the last question, unless you get any last minute ones here, what's the earliest date of departure following an award? I don't know.
We'd like, if you were to apply, that you'd go in August, because it takes the time for Sonia and I, the other awards manager, to arrange your visa and for all the cultural, because as we've all said, Tanya, Francis, everyone on the call, it's really about people. We want you to be in Ireland in June to attend all the award ceremonies and everything in person, which couldn't happen this year because of COVID, but really that's one of the best parts of Fulbright, is meeting all the other awardees and all that cultural programming. And just technical bits, we ask you to do a medical before you go to the States, and that can take some time. I see Tanya nodding, to get your all your vaccines and everything in order, and your TB tests and everything. So all these little things actually take time. So August is kind of realistically the earliest you could go. And also, you want an enriching, engaging Fulbright experience. Do you really want to be in Arizona State or wherever when there's no one on campus? Like, I'd strongly urge you to go during the academic year anyway. Sorry, Tanya, do you want to jump in there?
I was just going to say that the medical, even though there was no issue, there were some tests that my GP said, oh my God, are you kidding? That you have to have these done. And he couldn't believe that he had to order things. So it took longer to do. So they do take longer than you expect. That's all.
Strangely, we still have to do TB tests and everything, but these are US government requirements that may evolve. And then obviously whatever COVID, we don't know what's going to happen. People like Stefan, who flew in, had to self-isolate or whatever. Hopefully all these things will be going, but there may be extra requirements, but these things take a little bit of time to work out.
So I think we may have, can you split the term, Paula?
You can't. Well, you can in the sense of, if you want to go and do something. I know I had one student, Maeve Moriarty, I think she was going to Cornell and Alaska, and she was doing something in marine fisheries, and she was splitting her award between 2 different locations. That's fine. Not many students do it, but you can do it. But in terms of, I haven't seen anyone who's done half of their year and then come home for a year and then gone back to the States. I think that there'd be visa issues with that. Please correct me if anyone has actually come across that, or if anyone has done that. I just don't recall anyone doing that.
I think the person who asked that question said they thought Tanya might have split time, but I'm not sure exactly. You're muted.
I did actually come back to Ireland at one point during that. So, and then when I was going back, I met a very nice immigration officer who said, oh, you're a Fulbrighter. And I said I had to go back to DCU briefly, and they said, no problem. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
So,
like
but you can go back and forth in
yeah.
And I went to Canada as well during my Fulbright, because I was in Boston, so it's very close. So you're not tied to one specific place.
100%. And if you need to come home for a wedding or a funeral, that's okay too. And also, especially with the FLTA awards, because they're there for 10 months and they're allowed to stay for an extra 2 months at the end, we encourage people to go. If you're in New York, go to the Grand Canyon, go to Yosemite, travel, see America. So we do encourage that as well, to see all the states.
I went all over the place and actually was invited to far more places than I had time to go to. So it was great.
Donal had to jump out early. I think he's teaching a class, but he said, oh, you're muted, Tanya.
Sorry, I'm teaching a class too. So I have to go as well. Okay, if anyone ever wants to contact me, please feel free. But I have to leave. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so I was just saying, so Donal had to jump out, but he is your campus ambassador. And also, I'm sure the rest of the panel here would be happy to answer questions. But I will be sending everyone an email with a link to the video and also to the slides. I must get the slides off you, Rachel, as well, just to add on to my email as well to send around to everyone. Yeah,
and thanks Rowan for his hard work as well.
Not a bother. So I will CC everyone who's on the panel, so you'll be able to get in contact with them. And thanks a million for coming along today. And unless there are any other questions, no, I think we'll end it there. Thanks a million to all the panelists for your time. We really do appreciate it. And Helen for all of your work organizing this.
Thanks very much to Paula and Rowan. We really appreciate you guys coming in, and to all the panelists for all the time and the assistance that you've offered. Really appreciate it. And for everyone who attended today, thanks very much for turning up. Yeah, and best of luck if you apply now.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thanks.